Have you ever felt like life is just one endless loop of waking up, working, and waiting for some distant reward? Society tells us that if we work hard enough, climb the ladder, and sacrifice the present for the future, we will eventually find happiness. But what if that happiness never arrives? What if the pursuit itself is the trap? Alan Watts once said, "This is the real secret of life. To be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now." Yet most of us live as if happiness is some final destination rather than something we can experience in each moment. We chase careers, status, and security, only to realize that the more we run, the further peace seems to be. But what if work wasn't just a means to an end? What if we stopped treating life as a race to be won and instead saw it as a dance to be enjoyed? Have you ever felt like life is just one endless loop of waking up, working, and waiting for some distant reward? Society tells us that if we work hard enough, climb the ladder, and sacrifice the present for the future, we will eventually find happiness. But what if that happiness never arrives? What if the pursuit itself is the trap? Alan Watts once said, "This is the real secret of life. To be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now." Yet most of us live as if happiness is some final destination, rather than something we can experience in each moment. We chase careers, status, and security, only to realize that the more we run, the further peace seems to be. But what if work wasn't just a means to an end? What if we stopped treating life as a race to be won, and instead saw it as a dance to be enjoyed? You see, from an early age, we are conditioned to believe that life follows a linear progression. We go to school, get a degree, find a stable job, and then work our way up, some imaginary hierarchy that promises happiness at the peak. But no one ever questions the premise of this structure. No one stops to ask, what if the ladder I'm climbing is against the wrong wall? We move through life as if we are working towards some grand finale, an achievement so magnificent that it will finally make us feel complete. But there is no finale, just an endless series of moments, each as real and as important as the last. And yet we live in constant anticipation. We work not because we enjoy the work itself, but because of what it will bring us in the future. The problem is that the future never really comes. When you were a child, you longed to be a teenager, and as a teenager you dreamed of adulthood. As an adult you hope for retirement, and then when retirement arrives you wonder where all the time went. We are always preparing for life, but never truly living it. The truth is, work is not meant to be a mere stepping stone to something greater. It is meant to be an expression of who we are. Imagine a musician who plays the violin not for the sake of reaching the end of the song, but for the sheer joy of playing. Life is much the same way. The joy is not in the finishing, but in the doing. We must begin to see work not as a burden, but as an act of play, something we engage in with curiosity, enthusiasm, and presence. But how do we do this when the world demands results? How do we find meaning in work when it often feels mundane or exhausting? The key is not in changing the work itself, but in changing our relationship with it. We must stop working for something and start working from something. Instead of seeing our jobs as obligations, we must see them as opportunities. Opportunities to create, to grow, to serve, and to express. When we shift our focus from outcome to experience, everything changes. Alan Watts often spoke about the absurdity of waiting for life to begin. He would say that we are all caught in this strange game where we are forever deferring our happiness to some later point. But the great cosmic joke is that there is no later point, only now. When we understand this deeply, we stop struggling against the current of life and begin to move with it. This does not mean abandoning responsibility. It does not mean quitting your job and running off to meditate in the mountains. It simply means bringing mindfulness into whatever it is you do. Whether you are flipping burgers or painting a masterpiece, the real question is not what you are doing, but how you are doing it. Are you lost in frustration, counting the hours until you can leave? Or are you fully present, fully alive, finding joy in even the smallest moment? The world has conditioned us to believe that we are our work, that our worth is measured by our job titles and salaries. But you are not just a banker, a teacher, a clerk, or an engineer. You are something far greater, far deeper. The role you play in society is just that. A role. It is not the essence of who you are. And the moment you stop identifying with the role and start playing it with a sense of detachment and freedom, you will find that work no longer feels like a burden but a form of art. So if you feel lost in life, if you feel like you are merely going through the motions, waiting for something to change, realize this: there is nothing to wait for. This moment right now is all there is. Work is not a prison, nor is it a means to an end. It is a canvas and you are the artist. What will you paint today? We have been taught to believe that work is something we must endure, a necessary sacrifice for a better tomorrow. But tomorrow never truly arrives, because the mind is always reaching for the next thing. You graduate and think, once I land my dream job, I'll be happy. You get the job and say, once I get promoted, I'll be happy. You get promoted and think, once I make more money, I'll be happy. But no matter how much success you accumulate, there is always another level, another milestone, another reason why happiness must wait. This is the great illusion, the belief that fulfillment lies somewhere in the future rather than here in the present. Alan Watts often compared life to music. The goal of a song isn't to get to the end as quickly as possible. If that were the case, composers would write only finales. The beauty of music is in the movement, in the rise and fall of each note, in the unpredictable melody that unfolds in real time. Life, too, is meant to be played, not rushed through in desperate anticipation of an imagined reward. Yet most people treat work as a means to an end. They see it as something to be endured, a stepping stone towards something greater. But if you spend 40 or 50 years in this mindset, haven't you just spent the majority of your life waiting? And if you've spent your life waiting, when did you actually live? The problem is not work itself, but the way we perceive it. We have been conditioned to believe that work is separate from life, that it is something we must do in order to enjoy ourselves later. But what if the division between work and life is an illusion? What if work could be an extension of who we are, a form of play rather than mere survival? Look at children. They do not work for a reward. They build sandcastles, paint pictures, and invent stories simply because they enjoy the process. They are fully present in whatever they do, lost in the wonder of the moment. But as we grow older, we are told that such play is irresponsible, that we must be practical, that we must be realistic. We trade creativity for productivity, curiosity for efficiency, joy for obligation. But what if we never had to make that trade at all? To find freedom in work, we must first break free from the belief that our worth is measured by our productivity. Society has trained us to introduce ourselves with our job titles, as if they define us. I am a doctor, I am an engineer, I am a teacher. But these are merely roles we play, not the essence of who we are. Imagine a wave saying, I am just a ripple, forgetting that it is part of the vast ocean. You are not your job, you are life itself, experiencing the world through the unique lens of your being. When we stop identifying with our work, we gain the freedom to approach it with a sense of detachment. This does not mean indifference. In fact, it allows us to engage more deeply because we are no longer weighed down by the pressure of defining ourselves through external success. We can find joy in the simple act of creating, contributing, and expressing ourselves through our work. Alan Watts often spoke of the importance of surrender, of letting go of the need to control every outcome. The truth is, we cannot force life to unfold in a certain way. The more we struggle against the current, the more exhausted we become. But when we relax into the flow of life, when we trust the unfolding of each moment, we find that things begin to work effortlessly. Opportunities arise, creativity flourishes, and work no longer feels like work. If you find yourself lost in life, unsure of your direction, the answer is not in forcing a new path, but in embracing where you are. The present moment is not an obstacle. It is the only place where life happens. Whatever work you do, do it fully, not for the sake of reaching some distant goal, but for the sake of doing it. If you can find joy in the smallest tasks, you will have unlocked the greatest secret of all. Not how to escape work, but how to transform it into something beautiful. Most people live under the illusion that they are working towards something, some final point where everything will come together and they will finally feel complete. They believe that if they work hard enough, sacrifice enough, and push through enough suffering, they will reach a moment where life rewards them with happiness. But that moment never comes, because life does not work that way. There is no final point, no ultimate reward at the end of all this effort. There is only now, and the question is whether you are truly living in it or merely enduring it for some imagined future. Alan Watts often spoke about the way people treat life as a journey with a serious destination. We are told to work hard in school to get into a good university, to work hard in university to get a good job, to work hard in that job so we can earn promotions and security, and to keep going until one day we retire and can finally enjoy ourselves. But by the time we reach that moment, we are often too tired, too set in our ways, or too accustomed to stress and worry to actually enjoy the freedom we spent our whole lives chasing. The problem is that we do not see life for what it truly is. We believe that work is something we must do in order to get to the real part of life later. But what if work was never separate from life at all? What if work is just another aspect of living, no different from eating, breathing, or sleeping? We have been taught to see work as a burden, something to escape from, something we have to do rather than something we get to do. But if we shift our perspective, we realize that work is just another form of existence, another way of engaging with the world. Think about the way an artist paints, the way a musician plays, or the way a child builds sandcastles on the shore. None of these activities are done with the goal of reaching a final point. The artist does not paint just to finish the painting. The musician does not play just to get to the end of the song. The child does not build just to have a finished sandcastle. They build because they love the act of building. There is joy in the process, not just in the result. The tragedy is that most people have been conditioned to see work as something that only has value in its result, not in its doing. But what if we could change that? What if we could approach work the way a child approaches play? What if, instead of seeing work as something we must endure, we saw it as an opportunity to engage, to create, to explore? The difference between work and play is not in the activity itself, but in the attitude we bring to it. Work is only work when we resist it. But the moment we bring presence into it, the moment we fully engage with what we are doing without wishing to be somewhere else, work transforms into something entirely different. Alan Watts often encouraged people to stop thinking about work in terms of productivity, and instead think about it in terms of experience. What matters is not how much you achieve, but how deeply you experience what you are doing. If you are constantly thinking about what comes next, you will never be fully present in the now. And if you are never present in the now, then when exactly do you expect to be? People chase success because they believe it will give them happiness. But the greatest irony is that happiness is not something you find at the end of hard work. It is something you bring into the work itself. When you stop working just to get to the next thing, when you stop measuring your worth by your achievements, you begin to see work not as a necessary evil, but as an integral part of life itself. The most successful people are not those who work the hardest or push themselves the most, but those who have learned to find joy in what they do. So if you feel lost, if you feel like you are merely going through the motions, waiting for something to change, realize that there is nothing to wait for. The only moment that exists is this one. Work is not just a means to an end. It is part of the dance of life, and you are meant to move with it, not against it. When you stop treating work as something separate from joy, from play, from life itself, you will find that you are no longer lost at all. You are exactly where you needed to be all along. Most people live their lives as if they are moving towards some great moment of fulfillment, a final destination where everything will make sense and all their efforts will be justified. They push through school, through jobs, through endless responsibilities, all with the belief that one day they will arrive at a point where they can finally be happy. But have you ever noticed that the finish line keeps moving? As soon as you achieve one goal, another appears. As soon as you earn enough money to feel comfortable, you find new expenses. As soon as you reach a milestone, you feel the pressure to reach another. It's as if life is always just out of reach. Alan Watts described this as the great hoax of human existence, the idea that life is a journey with a serious purpose, a path that leads somewhere definite and final. But when you examine life closely, you realize that there is no final point. The entire structure is an illusion. There is no moment where you will suddenly feel complete because you were never incomplete to begin with. The idea that you must accomplish something before you can truly live is a lie that has been repeated so often that most people never question it. We see this illusion most clearly in our approach to work. From childhood, we are trained to believe that work is something we must do in order to earn the right to enjoy life later. We study to get good grades, we get good grades to get into a good university, we go to university to get a good job, we work a job to earn a living, and we keep working until we retire. And only then, we are told, can we finally rest, finally relax, finally do what we love. But by the time we reach that point, we are often too tired, too used to striving, or too fearful of change to actually enjoy the freedom we were promised. The real tragedy is that most people never realize they have been playing a game that was rigged from the start. The idea that happiness is something to be earned through suffering is one of the greatest deceptions of modern society. The truth is that happiness is not a reward waiting at the end of effort. It is something that exists here and now, in the way we approach everything we do. Alan Watts often spoke of the difference between work and play. Work, as we define it, is something we do out of necessity, something we endure so that we can later enjoy ourselves. Play, on the other hand, is something we do simply because we enjoy the process. The key insight is that the only difference between work and play is our attitude. If you can learn to approach work with the same curiosity and presence as you would a game, it ceases to be a burden and becomes something else entirely. But how do we do this when the world demands results, when bills must be paid and responsibilities cannot be ignored? The answer is not in escaping work, but in transforming our relationship with it. Instead of seeing work as an obstacle to be overcome, we must see it as part of the unfolding experience of life itself. The moment you stop resisting work and start engaging with it fully, you will find that it no longer feels like a burden. Think of a dancer. The purpose of dancing is not to arrive at a final position. The purpose is to dance. If you were only concerned with reaching the last step, you would miss the entire experience. Life is much the same. There is no final step, no ultimate achievement that will complete you. The act of living is enough. The act of working, of creating, of moving through each day with presence and awareness is enough. So if you feel lost, if you feel like you are stuck in a cycle of endless striving, ask yourself, what would happen if you stopped waiting? What if you brought joy into your work now? What if you played with life instead of treating it like a test to be passed? The answer is simple. You would no longer feel lost. You would realize that you were never lost at all, only caught in a game that you had the power to change all along. Most people live their lives under the impression that they are on a path leading somewhere important, a destination where everything will finally fall into place. They believe that if they just work hard enough, struggle long enough, and sacrifice enough, they will eventually arrive at a moment of peace and satisfaction. But this moment never comes. No matter how much success is achieved, no matter how much money is earned, no matter how many milestones are reached, there is always another goal, another problem, another reason to keep pushing forward. The truth is, the finish line is an illusion. It is always moving, always just out of reach. And so we spend our entire lives chasing something that was never real to begin with. Alan Watts described this as one of the great deceptions of life, the belief that we are moving towards something definite, something final, But if life were really about arriving at a destination, why do we never feel like we have arrived? The reason is simple. Life was never meant to be a journey with a serious purpose. It was meant to be a dance, something to be experienced in the moment rather than endlessly prepared for. Yet most people are caught in a cycle of waiting. They wait to graduate, wait to get a job, wait to get promoted, wait to earn more money, wait for retirement, and all the while, life is slipping through their fingers. The place where this deception is most obvious is in our relationship with work. We are conditioned from childhood to see work as something we must do in order to enjoy life later. We are told that if we work hard now, we will be rewarded in the future, but if we are always working for the future, when do we actually live? The tragedy is that most people reach the end of their lives and realize that they spent the entire time preparing for something that never arrived. This is the illusion we must break free from. The idea that work is separate from life, that it is something we must endure rather than something we can engage with fully. Alan Watts often spoke about the difference between work and play. Work, as most people understand it, is something done out of necessity, something endured in order to reach a later goal. Play, on the other hand, is something done purely for its own sake. But what if the only difference between work and play is our attitude? What if work could be play if we approached it with the right mindset? When we stop seeing work as a means to an end, we begin to see it as an experience in itself. Imagine a musician playing a piece of music. The purpose of playing is not to get to the end of the song as quickly as possible. The joy is in the playing itself, in the movement, in the expression, in the sound. Life is no different. The purpose is not to rush toward an end goal, but to engage with each moment fully. The reason people feel lost in life is not because they lack direction, but because they have been given the wrong map. They have been told that happiness is something that must be earned, that fulfillment is something that exists somewhere in the future. But if you look closely, you will see that life is happening now. It is not waiting for you to be successful. It is not waiting for you to have more money, more recognition, more security. It is unfolding in every breath, in every task, in every seemingly ordinary moment. So if you feel lost, the answer is not to push harder, to struggle more, or to seek some grand purpose outside yourself. The answer is to let go of the idea that life is something you need to figure out. You are not here to solve life like a puzzle, or conquer it like a mountain. You are here to experience it. When you realize this, work ceases to be a burden. It becomes another way to engage with the present, another way to play, another way to dance with existence itself. And in that moment you will see that you were never lost at all. You were just looking for something that was already right in front of you. Let me tell you something that might sting a little. Being the nice girl? It's not kindness. It's fear in disguise. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of being judged. Fear of being too much. You smile when you want to scream. You say yes when everything in your body is begging you to say no. And you call it being nice. But let's call it what it really is, self-abandonment. Because here's the truth. When you stop being the nice girl, your life doesn't fall apart. It finally begins. Absolutely. Here's the expanded intro in Mel Robbins' voice, now around 700 words and fully fleshed out. Let me tell you something most people don't want to admit. Being the nice girl is a trap, and you know it deep down. You've felt it, you've lived it. It's exhausting. You show up with that smile glued to your face, always agreeable, always available, always putting everyone else's needs ahead of your own, and then you wonder why you feel so damn tired, so disconnected, so resentful. You tell yourself it's just who you are. I'm just nice. No. You've been trained to be nice, conditioned to play small, taught to avoid conflict, to make everyone else comfortable, even if it means you're wildly uncomfortable in the process. You're not being kind, you're being compliant. There's a difference. Kindness is powerful. Kindness is intentional. But this nice girl act is rooted in fear. Fear of disappointing people. Fear of being judged. Fear that if you finally speak up, finally take up space, finally draw a line and say, this is not okay, you'll be rejected. So instead, you stay quiet. You make yourself small. You become the version of yourself that the world told you would be most acceptable. And what does that get you? Broken boundaries. And the worst part, nobody even sees the real you. They just see the character you've been playing. Let's just get real for a second. How many times have you said yes to something you didn't want to do? How many times have you smiled through something that made you feel invisible, uncomfortable, disrespected? You don't want to make a scene. You don't want to be too much. So you swallow it. You bury it. You try to convince yourself it's not a big deal. But it is a big deal. Every time you say yes when you want to say no, you're abandoning yourself. Every time you prioritize someone else's needs above your own to avoid conflict, you're teaching your own nervous system that your voice doesn't matter. And you start to believe it. You start to believe that your role in life is to keep the peace, even if it costs you your sanity. That is not your purpose. That is not your power. When you stop being the nice girl, when you finally stop performing, stop apologizing, stop shrinking, you don't become a bad person. You become an authentic one. You become someone who's not afraid to take up space. Someone who knows that saying no is not rude, it's necessary. Someone who understands that respect is earned not by being liked by everyone, but by standing firm in who you are. Here's what happens when you stop being the nice girl. People might get uncomfortable. Let them. You might disappoint someone. That's okay. You might even lose a few relationships that were built entirely on your silence and your compliance. That's not a loss. Because the moment you drop the mask, the moment you stop saying what you think people want to hear and start saying what's actually true for you, that's the moment your real life begins. That's the moment you start attracting people who value your honesty over your harmony. That's the moment you start walking through the world with your head held high, your boundaries in place, and your soul intact. This isn't about becoming hard or cold or closed off. This is about becoming whole, about recognizing that your voice matters, your needs matter, your time, your energy, your dreams, they matter. And the people who can't handle that, the people who only loved you when you were quiet, agreeable, and easy to control, they were never really in your corner. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You need to be loved by you. And loving yourself means protecting your peace. It means speaking up when something doesn't sit right. It means walking away when something crosses your line. It means showing up as the version of you that doesn't need to shrink to make other people comfortable. You are not here to be digestible. You are not here to be convenient. You are not here to make everyone else's life easier at the cost of your own. You are here to be powerful, to be bold, to be you. And that starts the moment you stop being the nice girl and start being real. Let me know when you're ready for the next section of the speech. I'll keep it fiery and focused. You teach people how to treat you. We read that again. You teach people how to treat you, not with your words, but with your actions. Every time you tolerate being talked over, every time you let someone disrespect your time, your energy, your value, you're silently teaching them that it's okay, that you'll put up with it, that you'll smile through it, even when it hurts. And the worst part, you've probably convinced yourself that this is just the way things are, that it's easier to go along with it than to stand up for yourself. But let me ask you something. When was the last time being nice actually protected you? When was the last time all that approval you were chasing actually made you feel seen? Because from what I've seen, and I've been there, It doesn't. It's never enough. You give and give and give, hoping someone will finally give back. You keep showing up for everyone else, secretly hoping someone will finally show up for you. And when they don't, you blame yourself. You wonder what you did wrong. You wonder why they don't appreciate you. Here's the truth. People can't value what you don't value yourself. If you don't advocate for your own worth, no one else will. If you keep handing out free access to your time, your energy, your heart, people will keep taking. And that's not because they're evil, it's because you're letting them. We all want to be liked, it's human nature. But when your desire to be liked overrides your self-respect, that's when you've got a problem. That's when you wake up one day and realize your life isn't even yours anymore. You've built your whole identity around being agreeable, around being who they needed, but what about who you need to be? Being liked is not the same thing as being respected. Respect comes from boundaries. It comes from self-assurance. It comes from being willing to say, no, that doesn't work for me, and not apologizing for it. And guess what? When you start doing that, when you stop bending over backward to make everyone else happy, you're going to ruffle some feathers. People are going to get uncomfortable. Some might even get angry. That's a good sign. That means you're no longer participating in the game of being easy to swallow. You're no longer molding yourself into whatever shape someone else needs you to be. And here's what happens. The wrong people will fall away, but the right ones, they will rise up. They'll meet you where you are. They'll see your fire and not try to extinguish it. They'll respect your no. They'll appreciate your honesty. And most of all, they'll value the real you. I know what you're thinking. What if people leave? What if I'm alone? And listen, I get it. That fear is real. But what's lonelier than being surrounded by people who don't even know you, who only stick around because you've made yourself convenient for them? I'd rather have one real connection with someone who sees me fully than 10 relationships based on performance and pretending. And you know what? When you start showing up as your whole unapologetic self, you create space for those kinds of connections to enter your life. People can't find the real you if you keep hiding her behind approval and politeness. You don't owe anyone a watered-down version of yourself. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone your peace just to avoid awkwardness. Every time you say what you really mean, even if your voice shakes, you take back a little piece of your power. Every time you set a boundary, you draw a line in the sand that says, this is who I am and this is what I deserve. That's what changes everything. This is not about being mean. This is not about becoming aggressive or selfish. This is about alignment. It's about becoming the kind of woman who knows her worth and isn't afraid to live like it, who doesn't let guilt dictate her choices, who doesn't shrink to fit into spaces she's outgrown. It's about showing up fully and completely and finally choosing you, because when you start teaching people how to treat you with respect, guess what happens? They start learning, and so do you. You start realizing that the love you were chasing from the outside, it begins with the way you show up for yourself. And when that clicks, when you finally stop playing small, you don't just change how the world sees you, you change how you see yourself. And that's the beginning of everything. Ready for section 3? It's about unleashing the superpower of saying no. Let's keep this fire burning. Let's talk about the word no. That tiny 2-letter word that so many of us are terrified to use, especially if you've been raised to be the nice girl. Because somewhere along the way you were taught that saying no makes you rude, makes you difficult, makes you selfish. You were conditioned to believe that no was a rejection of others instead of a protection of yourself. But here's the truth. No is not a bad word. It's not a betrayal. It's not a weakness. No is a boundary. No is a filter. No is a superpower. When you start saying no, your whole life changes. You stop wasting time on things that drain you. You stop signing up for things just to keep the peace. You stop bending over backward to make sure everyone else is comfortable while you're secretly drowning. Because here's what no one tells you. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't align with you, you're saying no to yourself, to your priorities, to your values. And eventually those little yeses add up into a life that doesn't feel like yours at all. You're not on this planet to be everyone's assistant. You're not here to manage other people's emotions. You're not a doormat. You're not a convenience. You are a whole person with needs, dreams, and limits, and the sooner you start acting like it, the better everything gets. But I get it. Saying no is scary at first. You worry people will be upset, that they'll think you're mean or selfish or inconsiderate. And yes, some people might, especially if they've gotten used to you always saying yes, especially if they've built a relationship with a version of you who never pushes back. But let me tell you something. If someone only values you when you say yes to everything, they don't value you. They value your compliance, your silence, your availability. You want to know who the strongest people are? The ones who can sit in someone else's disappointment without making it their responsibility. That's what saying no teaches you. That just because someone is uncomfortable doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. That someone else's reaction is not your burden to carry. You are not responsible for everyone's happiness, and you never were. Saying no creates space. Space for rest, space for joy, space for the things that matter to you. When you say no to what drains you, you say yes to what fuels you. And that's when everything starts to shift. You get your time back, you get your energy back, you get your power back. And here's the thing most people miss. Saying no actually makes your yes more powerful. When you stop agreeing to things out of guilt or fear, the moments when you do say yes, they're rooted in truth, in alignment, in love, and that energy hits differently. That's when you show up fully. That's when you stop resenting the things you've committed to, because you chose them, not out of obligation, but out of intention. You don't need to justify your no. You don't need to explain it. You don't need to dress it up with 50 excuses to make someone else feel better. No is a complete sentence. No, thank you. No, that doesn't work for me. And that's it. The more you practice it, the stronger you get. And the stronger you get, the more your life begins to reflect you, not the version of you who was trying to keep everyone happy. And let me say this loud and clear. Saying no doesn't make you less loving. It makes your love honest. It makes your relationships real, because they're built on truth, not on performance, not on pretending. You deserve to be in relationships, in environments, in situations where your boundaries are not just respected but honored, where you don't have to twist yourself into 1,000 versions just to be enough. The world does not need another nice girl who's quietly crumbling inside. The world needs women who know how to say no, women who value their time, women who understand that protecting their energy is not selfish, it's essential. Because when your energy is protected, when your mind is clear and your soul is unburdened by guilt and obligation, you are unstoppable. This is what happens when you stop being the nice girl and start owning your no. Your life becomes yours again. Your time becomes yours again. And you stop waiting for permission to feel at peace. Because peace isn't something you're given, it's something you claim. And it starts with a single word. No. Here's something nobody told you while you were growing up. Being liked will never get you the respect you're craving. You can be the most pleasant, polite, agreeable person in the room and still feel like people walk all over you. Why? Because respect doesn't come from being nice, from having standards, from showing people where the line is and what happens if they cross it. But let's just call it out. You've been trained to think that if people like you, they'll respect you. So you learned to smile when you didn't want to. You learned to be easygoing, flexible, no problem, I've got it. You learned how to tolerate things that made you feel small, comments, behaviors, expectations, just so no one would call you difficult. And you know what it got you? Resentment, burnout, confusion. You're bending over backwards to be everything for everyone, and deep down you're screaming, why doesn't anyone appreciate me? Why do I feel invisible? Because being liked is easy. People like you when you make their lives easier. People like you when you don't make waves. But respect, that's different. Respect means they listen when you speak. Respect means they consider your time and your energy before they ask for more of it. Respect means they understand that you have boundaries and they don't push them. And that only happens when you start drawing those lines. You think people don't treat you well because of who they are, but sometimes it's because of what you've allowed, what you've let slide, what you've accepted just to avoid the discomfort of a confrontation. But let me tell you something. Boundaries are not about being harsh. They are about being clear. And clarity is love. It's love for yourself, and it's even love for others, because it tells the truth. It says, this is how I function, this is what I need, this is what I won't tolerate. People can't respect what you hide. If you're always sugarcoating your feelings, if you're always swallowing your truth to keep things smooth, people can't see the real you. And you can't blame them for that. You've got to start showing up with honesty. And yes, that might mean disappointing people. That might mean having hard conversations. That might mean being called too much or selfish or cold. Let them talk. Let them react. Because here's what happens. The people who truly love you, the people who are meant to be in your life, they'll adjust. They'll learn your language. They'll meet your standards. And the ones who fall away, that's not loss. That's alignment. That's clarity. That's space opening up for people who actually see and respect the version of you who isn't afraid to be real. Respect is not something you demand. It's something you command. By how you carry yourself, by the way you say no, that's not okay, by the way you choose rest over proving your worth, by the way you stop over-explaining, over-apologizing, over-extending. Every time you assert a boundary, you raise your value, not in some arrogant way, but in a deeply grounded, self-assured way. And yes, it's going to be uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent your whole life trying to be liked. Especially if your worth has been tied up in making sure everyone around you feels good. But that discomfort, that's growth. That's your nervous system rewiring itself to understand that you matter too. You don't need to be liked by everyone. What you need is to be respected by the people who are in your life. And that starts with you respecting yourself. Not just when it's easy, not just when you're having a good day, but when it's hard, when you're scared, when you know setting that boundary might shake things up. You do it anyway, because you know who you are, and you know what you deserve. Here's the secret. When you stop being the nice girl and start showing people where the line is, they might flinch, but they'll also listen. You teach them how to show up. You teach them how to treat you. And most importantly, you teach yourself that your worth isn't tied to keeping the peace. Your worth is inherent, unshakable, and it shines the brightest when you start shrinking for others and start standing up for you. Let me know when you're ready for Section 5. This one's going to be about what's waiting for you when you finally drop the nice girl act, the bold, brilliant, unapologetic version of you. So what happens when you finally stop being the nice girl? Let me tell you, everything changes. You wake up differently, you walk differently, you stop second-guessing every word that comes out of your mouth, you stop overanalyzing every interaction, wondering if you upset someone or came across the wrong way. You don't shrink when you walk into a room, you take up space. Not because you want to dominate, but because you finally understand you're allowed to exist fully. Loudly, honestly, that's what happens. You start saying what you mean. You start honoring your own energy. You start making decisions based on what's right for you, not what will keep everyone else comfortable. You're not afraid to say, let me think about that. You're not afraid to say no. You don't feel guilty for not being available 24/7. You stop apologizing for your boundaries, for your ambition, for your opinions, for your opinions, for your opinions, for your stand. Because here's the thing, being the nice girl never got you what you wanted. It got you overlooked. It got you undervalued. It got you used. It got you stuck. But when you stop being nice in the way the world defines it, when you stop living in fear of being too much, too direct, too intimidating, you become free. You stop living to be liked. You start living to be real. And when that shift happens, you start attracting different energy. You attract people who actually see you, people who don't flinch when you speak your truth, people who don't take advantage of your silence or guilt you for having limits. You attract opportunities that align with your values, not ones you have to mold yourself to fit into. You start saying, this is who I am, and you say it without flinching, without apologizing, without needing anyone's permission. The nice girl is always waiting for approval, but the woman who's done performing, she gives herself permission. She gives herself permission to rest without guilt, to change her mind, to walk away from relationships that no longer serve her. She gives herself permission to take up space, to say, I deserve better, to ask for what she needs without watering it down to make it easier to hear. And you know what's wild? The more you own who you are, the more magnetic you become. People feel it. They feel your clarity, your confidence, your roundedness, and it's not loud or aggressive, it's just solid. Because nothing is more powerful than a woman who has nothing to prove. You become dangerous in the best way. Dangerous to the systems that taught you your worth was tied to being pleasing. Dangerous to anyone who thought you'd stay quiet forever. Dangerous because you know what you want, and you're not afraid to walk away from anything that isn't it. And you don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to beg people to understand. You just move. You trust yourself. You make decisions that support your peace, your purpose, your power. And the best part? You finally feel alive. Because when you stop performing, you get to be present. You're not managing everyone else's feelings anymore. You're not carrying the weight of false identities or silent resentments. You're just you, real, raw, whole. And it's not always easy. It's not always pretty. You're going to lose some people. You're going to outgrow some situations. But what you gain is worth everything. You gain yourself, your time, your voice, your freedom, your truth. And that truth, it will guide you into the life you were meant to live, not the one you settled for while trying to be liked. So no, you're not the nice girl anymore. You're the woman who knows what she wants, who stands her ground, who doesn't play small to be accepted, who knows that love rooted in obedience isn't love, it's control, and you're done with that. You are done being palatable. You are done being quiet. You are done being easy to carry. You were never meant to be nice. You were meant to be powerful. If you want, I can now help you format this full speech for video, voiceover, or presentation, whatever fits your platform. Just say the word.
Let me tell you something nobody says out loud. Men don't fall deeply in love because of how you look, what you wear, or how perfectly you play it cool. They fall in love when they feel something real. And that realness, it starts with you. You don't need to chase, impress, or twist yourself into someone you're not. You need to show up fully, authentically, unapologetically, and with standards that scare off the wrong ones and attract the right one. Because the truth is, men fall deeply in love when you do this. You want me to roll into the full speech now? Let me say this loud and clear. Men fall deeply in love with women who are unapologetically themselves. Period. End of story. Not the ones who morph into what they think a man wants, not the ones who hold back their personality, their dreams, their boundaries just to keep the peace. No. That's not love. That's fear dressed up as people-pleasing. And that never lasts. You want to know what really grabs a man's heart? It's not your waistline, your lipstick shade, or whether you cooked him dinner. It's the way you walk into a room like you belong there. It's the way you own your voice. It's how you laugh loud when something's funny. It's how you speak up when something's off. It's you being you fully, completely, and without hesitation. We've been taught to be likable, to not rock the boat, to shrink ourselves so we're easier to love. And let me tell you right now, shrinking yourself will never lead to deep love. Not from him, and not from yourself either. When you're pretending to be someone you're not just to win someone over, you're setting up a relationship where you can't even breathe. That's not love. That's performance. And here's the kicker. You don't need to perform to be loved. You just need to be seen. And how can anyone see you if you're hiding? You know what happens when you stop apologizing for who you are? The right people start showing up. The wrong ones, they'll walk away, and good riddance, let them go. When you're real, when you show up as the woman who laughs too loud or cries during movies or big goals, that's when someone gets to fall in love with the real you. That's when a man connects with your soul, not just your surface. Men aren't looking for perfection. They're looking for connection. They fall for the woman who brings peace to herself, not chaos from constant insecurity. And peace doesn't come from being flawless. Peace comes from being authentic. And confidence, real confidence, doesn't come from being everything to everyone. It comes from being enough for yourself. So if you're walking on eggshells in a relationship right now, if you're censoring your thoughts, holding back your opinions, constantly calculating how to keep him interested, I need you to stop, because what you're actually doing is erasing yourself. And the longer you do that, the harder it becomes to find someone who loves the real you, because you haven't even let her show up. Deep love, the kind that sticks, the kind that grows, the kind that makes a man say, this is it, this is her. That love is built on truth, and truth means vulnerability. It means showing up with your quirks, your boundaries, your voice, not apologizing for them, not toning them down. So the next time you're wondering what will make him fall in love, ask yourself, am I even being myself? Because the right man, he's not just falling in love with how you look, he's falling in love with how you live, with how you speak your truth, with how you carry yourself like someone who doesn't need to be chosen because you already chose yourself. That's the secret. That's the shift. And when you make it, everything changes. Love gets easier, stronger, deeper, because now you're not chasing love, you're attracting it. And it's all because you finally did the one thing that makes all the difference. You started being you. Ready for me to expand the next keynote into a full segment too?